Are you bored to tears with lots of online presentations? More importantly, are you nervous that you're boring people to tears with lots of online presentations? Well, if it's the latter, I think I can help you. If it's the former, send the people who are watching over to here. You see, I don't believe there's any boring content. I think there's only content delivered in a boring way. And I think we can find ways to make presentations interesting. In fact, my life, I speak about PowerPoint for a living. I speak about presentations and crazy and speaking to people, topics that nobody would find interesting, but I find a way, hopefully, to make that engaging. Now, a few weeks ago, I was invited by Prezi to deliver a webinar to their customers and users around how you can rethink presentations and use Prezi and Prezi Video to really level up your presentations. Now, that's whether you're doing keynote talks or addresses or company presentations like this, or if you're trying to sell to a customer. What we've got now for you is that webinar. I put it at the back of this video. It lasts 30 minutes. I put some markers down below so you can see what we're covering at what bit and at what time if you want to jump across. But most importantly, what I'm hoping to do in the next 30 minutes is reframe how you think about creating visuals and using visual space when presenting online. Just by flicking that switch in your head, I think I will change the way you start thinking about the presentations you're building, and your audience will thank you for it. You'll be more engaged, you'll be delivering those sales meetings, and people's eyes will open up. I promise you, I see it time and again. These are tools we use in our business every day when we're selling our products. So that's it. It's a 30-minute webinar presented by Prezi that I was very proud to be part of. At the end, I do talk about some slides that I'll give away that to help you make great presentations. The link to those are included in the description below. If you got value of it, please hit like. If you got a lot of value of it, I would love it if you hit subscribe because I want to bring much more value to you. So over to past me delivering a presentation. Well, hello everybody. So good to be here. Pumped to be part of this and to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me, Spencer. Thank you so much for the intro. It is an incredible time to be alive. It's a great time to be presenting. I see everybody just chatting from all over. I see James saying hello from Buffalo. Sorry about your hockey team, James. It's not a great time to be a hockey fan from Buffalo. Appreciate you all being here. It's fantastic. If ever you see me lose my eye contact at all, it's because I am trying as much as I can to engage with you and to see what you're asking and sharing and chatting. I promise to keep my best attention though for you and for everybody here. So why are we here? Well, I want you to ask yourself a question, a what if question. What if, as a presenter, what if you were able to show up with all the set, with all the value, with all the tools and creativity of a Broadway musical? What happens if every time you're doing a presentation, whether it was a sales pitch or a school presentation or a keynote or a TED Talk, you were able to bring everything to life with the same way that people bring Broadway musicals to life? Well, I believe we can, and I believe it matters, and I believe that we have to reframe the way we think about presentations. And in the next 30 minutes, that's what I'm hoping to do for you. I want you to go away thinking, hey, I'm in Broadway. I can bring it better than I've ever done before. But first of all, and this is the only time I'm going to do this, for those of you who were on my last visit with the Prezi team, and feel free to let me know if you were with an emoji in the chat. I would love to know if anybody came back for more. If you didn't, that's awkward. But I'd love to know if any of you were here before, so feel free. Thank you, Haley. That's amazing. So I want to take you back to a little bit of content that I shared then in a section entitled Previously on Prezi. So previously on Prezi, I was having a conversation with my son. Now, my son has just turned 18 years old. That ages me. I'm 46 years old. And I was chatting to him, and when he was younger, he wanted to be a presenter. And I said to him, kid, you know, he'd been really pushing it to be doing speaking at school and things, but all of a sudden he stopped. I said, kid, why are you not doing presentations anymore? Cal, like, what's going on? And and I see the chats about Buffalo in the chat. And he turned around and he said to me, but you know, Dad, I no longer want to be a speaker. I don't want to be a speaker like you. And I said, that's okay. What do you want to be? I want you to be happy. I want you to do what you want to do. And he said, well, I want to be an astrophysicist. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I said to him, so why astrophysics? Like, who did you see to make you fall in love with astrophysics? And he said, oh, I saw this guy. His name is Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I was like, that guy's a badass. How do you know about him? He said, well, I saw him do a talk on YouTube. And I said, shut up and speak up, right? You saw him do a talk on YouTube. You saw him speak. And in my mind, and what I said to Callum that day, an astrophysicist who can speak will always have an advantage over an astrophysicist who can't. Any person that can present or speak will always have an unfair advantage over somebody who can't. And that's what presentation is. It is your unfair advantage, right? It's your ability to engage with people better than somebody else. And when all of the other things are equal, the person who can communicate their ideas better wins. And I want that to be you. And I want to share with you tips today of how you can do just that. Why? Well, because it will help you build your authority. When people see people speak, they naturally put them into positions of authority. It can grow yourself as a presenter. You know, presentation is one of those skills that you can only practice in public. So you got to do it more if you want to get better of it. The only reason people are scared is because they're unprepared. And the more you do it, the more you fall in love with it, the better it is. And then finally, you can make more sales. Like, I don't want to bring it right down to that, but you really, really can. If you can present better, you can sell more. End of story. Now, up until recently, though, everybody thought they had it dialed in. Everybody thought you were good enough. I know this because when our company was working, so my company Missing Link, we help people with presentations. When we were, selling these big conferences to companies, we say, "Do you need some training?" And they'd be like, "No, bro, I've been doing presentations for the last 20 years." I thought, that's not what I asked you. Do you need some training? And the problem is that everybody has it dialed in. So in the game of presenting, we know exactly what we're doing. It's like these old school Mario games. Do you remember this? If you're not thinking right now, right, then we can no longer be friends. But if you were thinking about that thing, and if you remember playing this, does anybody remember playing this at all when they were a kid or even recently? And you would sit there and you'd have it and you would go and you knew the moves that you had to do. That little dude would run over there and then he'd jump, and you would jump on that little thing, and then on the middle one, and then that little mushroom would come out, and then you would jump over, you get that, and you go beep, 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 and you go big, and you run over to the green thing, and then the green thing goes down, you go into that special thing. We had it dialed in. Right? We were so good because we knew how the level works. We did it on repeat over and over and over again. And that's exactly how we have been with presenting. People showed up, they got used to it, they put these crappy presentations with too many slides on it. And I don't want to say crappy PowerPoint presentations, because quite frankly, blaming PowerPoint for a bad presentation is like blaming a pan for a bad meal. It's fine, you're just not using it correctly, but we're going to talk a bit more about that later. But the game has changed. You see, we're no longer playing this level. What happened, what Prezi predicted way back in 2019 when they launched Prezi Video, is that we no longer wanted to play this game. We wanted to play this game. The game of Mario has changed, and that level that you thought you had dialed in, you don't. It's all changed. And unless we think about the way that we play and engage with our content and our audience and how we traverse this world of presenting, we're not going to take advantage. And that's what I want you to do. Now, this is the premise of the book I wrote. My first book I wrote the day before I turned 40 years old. It's called Legacide, Why Legacy Thinking is the Silent Killer of Innovation. I think Michael's going to drop in a link for you in here if you do want to check it out. However, there it is. Thank you. I don't think you need to read it because, like all business books, you probably get the joke on the first page. And let me tell you what the joke is. It is basically this. In any established organization or even brain, innovation or forward thinking doesn't happen when you do something new. It happens when you stop doing something old. And what I need you to do today is to stop thinking that you're an expert in presenting, to stop presenting the way you always have, and to realize that there is another way of doing it. Hannah, I'm afraid, is not available in audiobook because I am lazy, but I will get right to that. I'll do it in my good Scottish accent for you. So we want to make it easier for you to stay legacy. So in fact, if you stick around, what I've done is we prepared a little gift for you, and we prepared a whole bunch of the slides that I'm using today, and we have given them to you fully editable so that you'll be able to actually include them in your presentations and enhance your presentations this way. I want you to slay legacy thinking when it comes to presenting. And why do I want you to do that? Well, quite frankly, because there are more stages right now than at any other point in human history. Your opportunity to show up and present is better than it has ever been. All of these platforms are out there offering you the opportunity to engage with an audience, with the world, right? To engage with everybody out there. And I know, and everybody keeps on moaning to me saying, "Oh, but Rich, bro, you know what we have? We have fatigue." You don't have fatigue, right? Your audience does not have fatigue. That is a lie. You know what they have? Boredom, right? Your audience is bored. You know how I know this? Because they leave your presentation complaining about Zoom fatigue or screen fatigue, and they jump straight over here to Netflix, and Netflix numbers have gone up. Netflix are up by an hour per night per human. People are spending an hour more on Netflix a day. So that's not the problem. And if that's not the problem, then what is? What is the problem? Well, To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning of presenting. We have to understand where this all began. So I wanted to introduce you to these guys here. We have Cicero, we have Aristotle, and if you want to fall in love with the craft of presenting at all, you should check out Rhetoric by Aristotle, right? That's his treatise on presenting and human persuasion, and it's the basis of everything. Really, really worth checking out. But these guys would stand up and they would command audiences for hours at a time, just with the power and strength of their words, with these rhetorical tools that they would deliver when presenting. A more accessible book you could check out is called Thank You for Arguing. I highly recommend the Blinkist version of that as well, if you just want a primer into this. But incredible, incredible just speakers and ability to present. But then we moved on. We realized that you don't just have to use your voice, you can use visuals as well. And we got a bit creative. And at the beginning, it didn't have to be technological. We had very simple tools like this, right? Whiteboard. This is a flip chart or a whiteboard or a blackboard or whatever it was. People were able to show up and to present this way. And things got pretty cool then. We actually started getting used to presenting using this, and we could share things both visually and verbally with our audience. And then things changed a little bit, and then technology took over. And I don't know if you want to remember, does anybody in this audience remember these bad boys, right? Can anybody remember these? Did you use these at school? If you were the kid at school, if you were old like me, and you were the kid at school, you always put your hand up. You were like the one who wanted to be, because the teacher's pet got to change them. You were the transition master. Okay. Do you know how hard it was to print this? We had to like send it back 3 times. So what you did is you had this bit of technology here, right? And then you had this tool for presenting. And it was pretty cool. And you could actually sit there and the teacher would be ready to go. And when they were ready to present, all they did is they took this and they're like, okay, let's just see. Let me just see if this thing, hold on. Let me just see if this thing still works. Here we go. Yeah. Oh, wait. Got to just check on the power switch at the back here. Good. Do we have it working? Right. Okay. Power's back on. Here you go. And then they would put that down and that would work like this. Whoa! Can I just have a moment for how cool that was? Upside down most of the times, you're absolutely, then the bulb would blow. So we had this for a while, and this is how we're presenting, and this was technologically brilliant. People were like, what? This is amazing. You can just put little things, and you could present like this. And the idea of a transition was putting a piece of paper over it and pulling it back slowly. That's how you revealed bullet points. But then we realized we don't need this anymore. We have different tools. So we stuck with the screen, but we changed the technology and we went to tools like PowerPoint, linear presenting tools, linear sequencing engines. And as again, while I understand Prezi as our host here, and I'm a big fan of Prezi, in fact, it's the only tool I use right now, I don't hate PowerPoint like the rest of the world. I hate people using tools badly. But again, we'll come back to this. But we had this, but we're stuck in this kind of boxy format and it wasn't so cool. So then everything changed. Then we realized, hey, we can do this better. Our screens have changed. So we went 16:9. Do you remember that? All of a sudden, everything got more cinematic. Everything was powerful and it was cool. You know, like, hey, your kung fu is old and now you must die. Right? And things got better. We had these beautiful images. We could use big panoramic screens with lots of information on it, and things got great and that evolved. But then we started presenting online and we jumped onto tools like Zoom or Teams. And then what happened is, although we had these big screens, we thought that these screens were the presentation. And all of a sudden, the speaker was relegated to be stuck, you know, down here. And I don't know if you can see, like, there's Barney. Hey, everybody, what's going on? I'm stuck down here. Oh, my goodness. This is not ideal. What's going on? Well, there I am. And it was terrible. Like, this was crazy. And you know what? Nobody ever puts Barney in a corner. It was quite funny. I was asking Josh from my team who made these slides. I was like, bro, can you find me a slide that says nobody puts baby in a corner? And he found it, and he had that Patrick Swayze image. And then when we were chatting about it, like, he understood Barney. What's going on? But he said to me, bro, I don't even get this reference. And I'm trying to explain to a staff member who worked who was not alive when I started my business at 22. And I was trying to explain to him about the movie Dirty Dancing. And quite frankly, I have never felt more 46 years old in my entire life. I saw that movie twice at the cinemas. So we have to change. We need to shift our perception. We need to shift the way we think about this. And we've got to move from what it was, which was presenter beside the slide. And we got to change that to what it should be now. And that's presenter inside the slide. You see, there's no separation anymore. Now you are the content. You are part of everything. And how you engage with the slides around you is what will change the way that your audience engages with you and your information. And that's what today's talk is about. By the end of today's talk, what I want you to do is to think outside the slide. In fact, more important than just thinking outside the slide, I want you to climb inside the slide. That's what I want to share tips with you for. And before you think this is just something new because of technology, it's not new. We've been doing this before. I don't know if any of you remember this presentation by Al Gore, The Inconvenient Truth. And in that presentation, he wanted to show how the graph was not big enough. So all of a sudden, he got on a cherry picker, a crane, and that crane went up and up and up and up and up. And as it went up, an extra screen lit up, and he literally thought outside the slide. He built something bigger. Everything changed then. Right? And to the best of my knowledge, this was still the only presentation that has ever won an Oscar. And you must know, because our essentially competitors, but our contemporaries, because when you work in the presentation industry, it's a cooperative sport, because there's way more. One of you's got your mics live. There's way more presentations, problems than there are people trying to fix it. So I would like to say to Duarte, well done on this, because it was absolutely incredible. But then there was other presentations that thought in a different way about content. I don't know if any of you remember The Naked Chef, right? Jamie Oliver came on and he wanted to present, and what did he do? Well, he went and he was trying to show the problem with drinks and sugar that your kids were consuming in school every year. So he said, like, in 1 week it was this, and in 1 month it was this much. And then he kind of got tired of it, and he went and he took this whole big thing, said, in a year your kids are drinking this much sugar. Now, what is more powerful, that or a graph on a screen showing sugar consumption per child? This will get it locked in. Definitely worthwhile watching this talk, right? This is thinking outside the slide. And then one of my favorite examples, Bill Gates. Bill Gates standing in a TED audience. Now, I've been lucky enough to be at TED 5 times. I was brought over to train their TED fellow speakers, and really, really stoked to do that. But can you imagine that you're in a TED audience and a person is standing up there, a billionaire, one of the richest people at the time, probably the richest person in the world, was standing up and he was talking about malaria. Now, if you're sitting in an audience where you've paid basically $5,000 for a ticket kind of thing, you know what you don't worry about in your life? You're not worried about catching malaria. So how does he make you care? Well, do you know what he did? Can any of you remember what he did? Well, he opened it up and he let the mosquito out. And he let the mosquito out. Hold on. Right, sorry. And I just want to clarify for you that absolutely no mosquitoes were harmed during the making of this presentation. Don't judge. So what did he do? Well, he was thinking in a different way about the slide. And what I want to share with you, and I know one of you asked me to move on to the point, but already, you see, the point is getting you sucked in to the idea that there is a different way of doing things, to change your frame and your mind. I want to share with you 5 things that you need to think about that will help you break outside your slide. So what is slide breaker number 1? Well, slide breaker number 1 is you need to be both verbally and visually interesting. You have to be, and I'll tell you why, right? Because you can lose people's attention. There's no more locks on the back of the door, in the back of the room. There's no more doors at all. If anybody is bored of you, they can just leave and they can just be listening, and that's a problem. I don't know if you know this comedian. His name is Dimitri Martin. A while ago, he did a talk. He was complaining that some of his jokes didn't work the first time round. And, it was a bit of a problem, and he was frustrated, and he said he wants to try material in a different way. So how could he do that? Well, what he believed he could do is use material enhancers. And I want to share a clip with you that you can see to just understand how that worked. Watch this. Hey, am I right? That guy, how rad is that? And I'm going to send you a link at the end of it so that you too can watch the whole video. And so you can understand that I too have what it takes to be the greatest. I too have leather sleeves. So, pleather. Josh, don't judge. So, we need to change the way we think about presenting. Now, years ago, I read a paper by a guy called Richard E. Mayer. Now, Richard E. Mayer presented this paper called The Cognitive Theory of Multimedia Learning. Highly suggest you Google it, check it out. It's very, very, very powerful. Yes, Prezi can absolutely be used on WebEx, check. So it's a very, very powerful paper, and it'll change the way that you think about the interaction and how humans consume knowledge. But to get a little bit nerdy here, he presents this model for thinking. And I'll bring this into focus a little bit. You take your words and pictures. In fact, this is maybe a little bit too geeky, so let me just simplify this for you. In the past, we focused on eyes. We focused on our eyes. Like we were able to visually process information long before we were able to verbally process it. Right? We could see what was happening in the world around us long before we had language. We just had grunts, but people communicated visually. Then what happened is later on, we added words, and then our ears became an active part of actual communication day to day, figuring out what was going on. And then, of course, all of our other senses got involved, and this is where multimedia comes into play. You see, what your brain is trying to do is trying to process things, pictures. It's then trying to combine it with words. And then it's supposed to take those words and builds a combined model of that, which it then searches the database of your brain for an existing memory that it can hang its hook on. When it finds that that point, that visual point, and the more visual material you put in is like putting a better search in Google. So if you just have one sentence, one line from your mouth, that's a small search criteria. But if you have a picture, an image, a metaphor, and then you have that text, and again, a sentence on the screen, the same as the words in your mouth, is not a visual. It's just a repeat of that verbal channel. When you have that, that finds a model, and your brain is able to process this. Now, if you're not visually and verbally interesting, what's going to happen is your audience is going to leave. They're going to change the tab. This is what I refer to as the podcast principle. Because if I'm doing a presentation, and some of you are already bored, and I totally get that, that's not for everybody, and some of you have tapped out and you're maybe listening to this and checking your mail. I have just become a podcast. And as long as I'm a podcast, that's great, that's fine while you're listening. And if you're making a cup of coffee, no problem at all. But the moment that you tap into anything else, the moment you start doing your email or going on Twitter, I've just become Charlie Brown school teacher, and that's not good enough. So we need to change. And I realized that one of my fundamentals, one of the rules that I've been doing in the 20 odd years, 24 years I've owned a presentation company, and the 18 years I've been a speaker, is my SPH has changed. My SPH is my slides per hour. Now, I used to say to people, you worry about like a slide a minute. And I realized the time horizon was too short, because sometimes in a minute I want to present 5 slides, and other times I want to present 1 slide for 5 minutes. So actually a better model was this: 60 slides per hour. Over a 45-minute talk, I want to have roughly 45 slides. And that has done me, for the last 17, 18 years, that's done me really, really well. But all of a sudden, everything's changed. You see, when you're presenting online, when your audience can be distracted so much sooner, everything's changed. I realized originally I went to what a lot of people were saying is have less slides, less changes, because it's too distracting for your audience, to realize that actually what we need to have is more changes, right? I believe your slides per hour speed is now like 120. Everything is going quicker. And we've got to find a way to basically bring this speed into our presentations. But words matter as well. And it's of this idea of slides. It's maybe not as hard as you think, because I want us to change our mindset around slides. I don't think it's slides we need to be thinking about anymore. I think it is this: scenes. That's slide breaker number 2. I want you to stop thinking in terms of I have to make a slide deck, and I want you to start thinking about I have to create a scene. And that's what I've been trying to do throughout this presentation, is create visual scenes to try and immerse you in the content that I'm delivering. And that's what you can do as well, because as soon as we realize that it's not us beside the slide, we're able to do this way for presenting online. So what are the different tools you have at your disposal? Well, we can go back to the original tool that we had before, and that is the full slide. When you want to present a big slide and you want to have something that's up there, you absolutely can. But where am I looking? What am I engaging with? What do I want you to look at? Well, that brings me to the next tool in your arsenal, and that is the opaque slide. So now all of a sudden I can explain to you that I'm coming to you presenting, I was born up here in Glasgow, Scotland, but I'm presenting to you from here in Cape Town, with a beautiful view of Table Mountain, just where I am, just behind me. So amazing that we can now share content. Now imagine you're sharing a graph or data or numbers. Now you can put that in front. You can track your sales numbers as they move across. You can show how things are going, and your audience becomes immersed, but you can direct the traffic and attention of doing things, right? That is really, really powerful. And then the next tool is the one that Prezi Video really brought up, and that was the PIP, right? The picture in picture. Now, when I first started using Prezi Video, I was hooked. I just simply imported PowerPoint. I put it up like this. What I loved about it is I didn't need a virtual background, because it did everything on top of me. So it didn't require any special setting or set or lighting or green screen. I could just put it here. And it's quite funny because I saw the Teams just recently announced that now soon you will be able to be a newsreader. But even in Teams, you always could be using tools like Prezi or using Prezi. However, I quickly realized that this didn't use all the space I wanted it to use. It was kind of stuck in the middle, and that wasn't enough for me. So what I've been relying on, and as you've seen throughout the presentation today, is what we're referring to as the side slide. And the side slide, you can see that what we've got is we've got a slightly darker background to create a bigger contrast between what's happening in the foreground and what's happening behind, so that my sides are able to pop but not compete with me. And this actually works with the way that I've set up my camera, because I put myself here. I usually wear a black shirt, so the contrast ratio for me is strong, but then we've created the black there, and the contrast ratio here is strong as well. And then, of course, there's the set, right? The set where you can build these full sets where you can engage with people in a big way. Lastly, one of the tools that Prezi gives us so nicely is the prop. The prop for me is a great tool. Hey, Future Richard here. So at this point, the internet gods pulled the plug on me. All I was trying to say was go Leafs go and support my hockey team, but they just couldn't let me have it. Anyway, back to the show. Because it's all very well and good that you can use Prezi to do all these cool little tricks. However, a lot of that could be confused as being novelty, and it only becomes utility when it's part of something bigger. You need to understand that sometimes you want to show up and present naked. Sometimes you want to have nothing else on screen. And one of the greatest tools that Prezi gives you is the ability to transition from an image on screen to nothing on screen, to just you. And let me tell you this, you have to be very, very comfortable showing up to your audience and just presenting yourself, being just you and your content, nothing else, just that, delivering your message with there no other distraction. And this is one of the great scenes. It's not 120 slides per minute, because this is a scene that I want you to create as well. We're a scene with nothing. And for me, this is powerful because, of course, the magic is often in the space between, right? The magic happens when you give yourself room to breathe, when you give your slides room to breathe. If you're just going from cool content to cool content to cool content to great trick to great trick to great trick, it does start sounding like a cheap trick. And I openly admit that at the beginning, I was laying it on very thick because I wanted to open your eyes to what was possible. But maybe I needed to calm down a little bit and give you some space to breathe. Maybe I needed to give some magic in between. And you know why you need to do that? Because Prezi is not your presentation. You are the presentation. And people forget that all the time. So I was doing a webinar at Zoom recently. It was incredible. It was really, really amazing. Really nice big audience that came. I really was proud of the presentation that we'd written and delivered. And afterwards, the only question was basically, oh my goodness, what tool did you use to present? That was brilliant. What tool did you use to present? And the thing is, they're missing the point, or they're partly missing the point. I think the tool helps, but you need to start with the fundamentals. There's a lot more to it than just having cool graphics. Now, to illustrate this point, I want to tell you a story about a mathematician that was doing a presentation, a commencement address in 1974, the year that I was born. This mathematician's name was Richard Feynman, and he was presenting at Caltech. And he spoke about this idea of cargo cult theory. And Simma, I'm not going to talk about data security, but I'm sure the team will present on it later. He spoke about cargo cult theory, which is something I want you to check out. But if those of you who've not heard of it, I wanted to share with you this idea now. So when this started way back when is during World War II, there was the Allies landed in the South Pacific, and they built up these airfields that they had because they wanted to have supply drops and depots where they could receive their shipments, to feed the troops and things like this. So what they did is they built these airfields, and it was all great and everything was fantastic. And these planes would come flying in, and they would be coming down to land. And as they were flying in, this little dude, they had these towers built over here. And then these dudes at the end of the runway would be out there standing. And then the guy on the plane would be flying in, and they would look forward, and they would see these guys waving these sticks around and telling them where to go, and everything was great. And it continued like this for a long time until the war ended. And these planes would arrive, and they would leave these boxes of food, and then they would finish, and they would go back to where they came from. Now, the villagers were watching, and they were intrigued by what was happening. And then the war ended, and the planes went home. And all of a sudden, nothing, just back to normal, until around 20 years later. And about 20 years later, these anthropologists arrived back on these islands. And when they went to the islands, they noticed something strange happening. Every single morning, what would happen is these villagers would come out and they would climb into these little towers they built, and they would take these coconuts and they would put these coconuts on their ears. And then somebody would go stand at the end of this little dirt runway that they had, and they would wave these sticks over and over and over again. And they went and asked them, "What are you doing?" And they'd found these planes that these guys had built and these sets that they had done. And what they did is they asked them, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we're trying to call the airplanes back. You see, we saw that if you wave your sticks and stand in a tower with coconuts in your ear, the planes will land." But of course, that wasn't what made the airplanes land. There was a whole bunch more to it. And let me tell you this, these slides isn't just what's making the point land for you. They're certainly helping, right? They're so cool. They are amazing when they help. I mean, they're super cool, like a leather sleeves level of cool. However, they're not the presentation. You are. You write a good talk before you design one, before you create one. So I want you to think outside the slide, but I want you to start that thinking outside the slide with your content. The scene is there to support you. As Dimitri Martin said, it's just a material enhancer. And I want you to enhance your material, but you can only, nothing, Nothing kills a bad product like good advertising. Nothing kills a bad presentation like great slides, because then that's all you have. There has to be more to it than that. There has to be structure, there has to be narrative. And that's what you need to have going on. And this brings me to exactly what I need you to do for point number 5. And that is to start with the end in mind. You see, a presentation for me is very, very simple. The presentation's job is to deliver a message to achieve a result. And you have to know what that result is when you start. You have to decide on this. There's a number of elements that come together to make a great presentation, and the guys will share a link with you where you can watch a whole video I've done going into detail on this. But you need to have an effective presenter, you need to have functional technology, and you need to have relevant content. Okay, so all of this has to come together if you want to present well. When I'm speaking to somebody and I'm sharing or taking a brief on a presentation, I always ask them the same question, and that is this: when I get off the stage, if I have not achieved X, I have failed. What is X? And my job throughout a presentation is to work out what that X is with you, to work out what I want to achieve. And throughout my presentation, I have to drag you and me closer to that. And in this presentation, the X is I wanted you to build a big cross right over your traditional thinking about slides, your relationship with the content, and to start thinking in scenes, to think bigger than this. And as promised, I wanted to make sure that I gave you the gift that I promised. So if I want to make it easier for you by sharing with you some of the scenes that I've done in my presentation today. So if you want to, feel free to go and you can scan your phone on this QR code link or go to that address there. This is linked to our Prezi Masterclass. I promise you, you will, can unsubscribe from any email we send you. But when you register there, we will give you a pack where you have access to actually just copy paste and some instructions on how you can copy and paste this here. The link is in the chat there if you want to click it as well. And that's it. Just these 5 things that I want you to think about. So let's do a quick recap here before we get off to the end and I hand you back to Spencer. Number 1, I want you to be both verbally and visibly interesting. Start with the content you have, write your good talk before you design it, and then deliver it well. That's the write and design bit. Number 2, design scenes and not slides. There's more to a presentation than you and a bit of content sitting beside you. It can be fully immersive. And if you can immerse yourself in your slide, it makes it a lot easier for your audience to get immersed too. Number 3, present naked. Sometimes it's just you and your content, nothing else, and that's okay. Number 4 is that remember that you are the presentation. If all else fails, work under the assumption that your technology will fail. If you have it dialed in and you're confident in your content, it'll still be okay. And finally, number 5, start with the end in mind. And the end that I had for you ties back to the start at the very beginning, is that understanding that you are on Broadway and you have all the tools available to create a presentation that is as memorable and as visually beautiful, as visually immersive as a Broadway musical. Why should you care about it? Well, as a great entertainer, P.T. Barnum said, nobody ever made a difference by being like everybody else. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage you to not be like everybody else and to go out there and make a difference. I encourage you to go out there and think outside the slide. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it from me. Thank you very much. Boom. Stop it. Thank you. You're too much. Oh, stop, guys. Come on, guys. This is ridiculous. Stop it. Come on.